Step into the captivating world of the Behind the Curtain podcast, where your dynamic hosts, John Dyer and Dr. Mohammed Saleh, bring together a wealth of 60 years of combined experience in healthcare and manufacturing. Join us every week as we delve into intriguing topics, weaving unscripted conversations that promise to take you on an unpredictable and enlightening journey. Gain valuable insights for your continuous improvement adventure as we navigate uncharted territories with enthusiasm and expertise. Welcome to a podcast that goes beyond the ordinary, unraveling the mysteries behind the curtain of knowledge.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our next episode of Behind the Curtain. My name is John Dyer, and with me is Dr. Mohammed Saleh. And we're here today to talk about leadership and psychological safety when it comes to leadership. It's part of our theme that we're working on these last several episodes. So we want to dive deeper into this particular topic. So to start, Mohammed, what do we mean exactly by psychological safety? What does that even entail?
Yeah. John, so many people throw that word around these days, and have added all these gadgets to it and almost lost its initial root meaning. And so when we say, we have to create an atmosphere of psychological safety, that is, I think, is a prerequisite to any change. If you don't have that, don't do any of the other stuff right now. That is the most important thing. And when we talk about that, it really is defined as like an individual being secure and capable of making change. And so that is it. Like there's all these long definitions now about that, but it comes down to that. Do I feel secure to make change? Do I feel capable of making that change? And so if I'm not, then the environment isn't psychological safety. Psychological safety doesn't mean warm and fuzzy things in the environment that everyone just is like in kumbaya land. Like that is not psychological safety. And so you hear a lot of things. Oh, you have to set a culture of kindness and a culture. I'm not saying these are wrong. I'm just saying that's not what the definition means. Psychological safety is if I'm in an environment, do I feel secure that I'm not going to get reprimanded? And do I feel capable to be able to make change?
Okay. What's interesting about that, the time I got to spend with Dr. Deming, he has his 14 points.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I tell people is the one point he talked about the most by far was drive out fear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And when you think about what does that really mean, I think it goes hand in hand with what you're talking about.
100%.
Drive out fear of trying new things, fear of failure, or on the other hand, fear of sharing bad news.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not willing to admit that there's a problem, then you'll never get any better. That's the first step to improvement, is to admit that something needs to be improved.
Yeah.
Well, if there's a fear of, don't shoot the messenger, we hear that all the time, then no one's going to bring up any problems, and the boss, is going to think everything is terrific. One of the videos I love playing is the I Love Lucy, where they're doing the chocolates, right? And the boss tells them, you let one chocolate get by you, you're both fired. And so when the chocolates start going down, yeah, they can't keep up, and they're trying really hard, they're doing everything they can, but eventually they start realizing that we're going to fail. And because of that fear, they start hiding the problem, right? By stuffing chocolates into their mouth, into their hat, down their shirts. And then when the boss comes back, all the chocolates are gone. So the boss thinks that everything is great and says, hey, you're doing a fantastic job, and then yells to speed up the conveyor to do even more chocolates. And then they just get flooded. So that's the point, right? Is that if you don't have this culture of psychological safety, then the leader may think everything is great when in fact there are massive problems under the surface.
Before we go into the process of psychological safety, you just highlighted something that is super powerful, and I hope our audience got to follow what you just said. But there was three main components, I would say, are ingredients of dampening psychological safety or damaging or creating psychological harm. Let's use that word. And the first one is the lack of transparency. And so the boss didn't see what was happening. And so there's a lot of this lack of transparency. Then it was layered with this command and control style. You must, nothing better pass or else. And then that ended up layering the last piece of the pie, which was like then creating this culture of psychological safety that they hid everything. And so, if you want to destroy your culture, here's the three-step process, get rid of transparency, focus on command and control, create a culture of fear and blame others. Like that's it. You're good.
Right, right. And you got to wonder, why does that still happen today? Why are there cultures like that? And again, I think it goes back to the root cause that we've talked about the last couple of episodes, is that bosses feel like that's how they're being measured.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how they can get their big bonus, or that's how they can get promoted. And until that changes, that criteria changes, there's no incentive to do these things. Right. So like, let's take transparency for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to empower a team of employees to solve problems closest to the process, well, what does that entail, right? Well, first, they need to be trained in how to do that. They need some experience in doing that. It's not like when you hire an employee for the first time, you're not going to throw them into a job without any kind of training or any kind of learning curve expectation. We talk about the honeymoon phase.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first time you create a problem solving team, it's not like they're going to knock it out of the park, first time out. They need some practice. They need some iterations. They need experience.
Mm-hmm.
But then also they need data, right? They need to know where the problems are. They need to also know if their ideas are working and is it really fixing the problem. And if the leaders are reluctant to share that data, then how do they know if they're, winning or losing?
Yeah.
I've actually had managers tell me, hey, um, we don't want our employees to interact with our customers at all because it might embarrass us, or they might say the wrong thing. And I'm like, wait a minute. Well, then how are they going to know what the customer is experiencing? How are they going to be able to relate
Yeah.
to the customer's needs if they can't even interact with your customers?
100%. You know,
So yeah, there's a lot to making this happen.
you just said something also that I want to get back to that I think is really critical. And you know, we see, or I see, a lot of times people doing daily management and having visual boards, and then complaining that they don't have engagement. And if you look at the essence of the visual board, it's a three-step process. You have the visual piece of it, you have the the account the leader standard work piece of it, of actually like updating those metrics and going to the board, and then you have the accountability piece, which is the rituals and practices that feed that board. And when you look at the evolution of the board, it's an engagement board. It's so if you don't have engagement, there's something going on. Either you're not doing the rituals that allow for that to happen, or you're using it in the wrong fashion, and not and using it as a communication tool, not an engagement tool. And so, one of my favorite books, probably of all times, I would say it's probably in my top 5 books that I
Other
think,
than mine, right?
other than yours,
Yeah, yeah.
is a Harvard professor. Her name is Amy Edmondson. I'm a huge fan of her, and she wrote a book called The Fearless Organization. And I've been studying psychological safety for years, and then I ran into her book. And honestly, I loved how she outlined the process. And in her book, she talks about that there's really, at a high level, there's three main phases to creating a psychological safety from a process perspective. And when you look at your board, and I just want you to kind of use the board for this example is, let's use the board as the vehicle of creating psychological safety. The first part is she talks about is the setting the stage phase. And how do you set the stage? And she really gets into really understanding how do you frame the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. And so people, this allows for people to have pride in what they do, understand the purpose, what they do. She emphasizes on the purpose. And then she talks about having that shared expectation and even the meaning behind that purpose. And that's what the board should be able to tell you is on a daily basis, you should understand what your purpose is for the day. Then the second phase that she goes into, and then we can come back and dissect each piece, is how does she invite participation to the board? And if there's no engagement at the board, it's you, the one running the huddle. And so it's the leader. So leaders' participation is how do they invite participation? And she talks about a bunch of things in this area. It's probably one of the most richest part of the book. And she talks about, first of all, how do you invite participation? How do you do like situational humility so that you could demonstrate what humility looks like? So we talk about respecting every individual and leading with humility as two principles of lean. This is your opportunity to demonstrate humility. She talks about how do you practice inquiry and having those powerful questions, open-ended questions that it's able to drive and pull information from your team to engage them. And she also talks about like having a structured process in this process. And so, you're not winging it. There's a scientific method to everything that you're doing. And the point of that is getting like confidence that any voice is welcome here. And so the first one is you're sharing the expectations. The second one is you're getting confidence that people's voices are all welcome. And then you go into that last phase, and this is where things go south really quick for people, depending on their style of leadership, is that how do you then respond to that productively? And so, sometimes we are able to do the first two phases and then we like go south on the third phase. And she really focuses on how do you express appreciation. That's why I feel like any visual management board that doesn't have recognition on it is missing a big piece. Or any ritual that doesn't seek out who we're going to appreciate from yesterday's efforts is missing a big piece. And so how do you express appreciation? And then also, how do you destigmatize failure? Like failing fast is a motto that people saying. Obviously, you don't want to cause harm, but you also need to understand that experimentation is not always going to yield success, but it's going to yield learning. And so are you creating and orienting people for a culture of continuous learning, or are you reprimanding them when something goes wrong? And then she focuses on a piece that really got me thinking a lot after I finished her book was how do you create these, I'll call them boundaries of if anyone violates these conditions, there's a consequence for them. Because you see a lot of times people trying to create psychological safety and there's toxic people in the environment. They do whatever they want. They're still blaming people, but there's no consequence. And so how do teams know that you're serious about what you're trying to do if there's no clear boundaries that if you violate these things, there's going to be a punishment or there's going to be a consequence behind it? And so I love those phases because I feel like anyone could follow that phase to creating psychological safety. I'm using the visual management board as an example right now, but this could be used in anything really. This is just one vehicle that you could demonstrate psychological safety. So what do you think of that?
Yeah. So let's start with the daily management boards. Because you could actually take the inverse of everything that you just say.
Yeah.
And realize how damaging those can be if you don't do it the right way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen, one of the first things I like to do when I go visit a plant is walk around to see their, information boards or their daily management boards. And you'd be surprised or maybe you wouldn't be surprised how many times you do that and you realize that they're like 6 months out of date or they haven't been used for, months. And you're just like, why? What happened? And think about it. I mean, it can be something as simple as the red, green, status indicators.
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing your metrics on the board and you're indicating how we're doing as a team with, or even individually with red, green markers, well, what does red mean? Red means failure. And so people come to the boards every day and look at that and say, wait a minute, are you blaming the process or are you blaming me?
Yeah.
Because it looks like the red is me, blaming me. And after a while, knowing that you've given me bad equipment, bad parts, bad processes, bad everything, but the red is there. And if you, as the leader, if you were to say, hey, Muhammad, what happened yesterday?
Yeah.
Why did this metric get missed so bad? What did you do wrong? Then, okay, I'm shutting down. I'm not gonna say a word at these daily management meetings any longer,
Yeah.
because I feel like you're pointing the finger of blame at me.
Yeah.
So you can see if you do
And that's
the,
the responding aspect of it. Like,
yeah,
you're
exactly. But it's the
calling what
inverse of
is
what you
good.
just described.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
and so you can see why these things, and the intention might be good at the beginning when they first get launched, and the leaders put on a facade of, okay, I'm supposed to be humble, I'm supposed to say the right things, I'm supposed to, but after a few weeks of that, and it starts to become more routine, the leader might let their facade slip a little, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, what did you do here, man? Why did we miss this number so bad? Oh my gosh, you guys don't know what you're doing. And then the whole thing falls apart.
when we look at those phases, and we talk about like inviting participation, because you're hitting the nail on the head on that piece. There's a question I always ask people, or I ask leaders, before you show up to your huddle, before you show up to a Gemba walk, before you show up to your office, um, how can you invite more participation? And this is not intended to be sometimes people get lost in their conversation. You don't know exactly what are they gonna do. Like you talked about it a lot. You complained about why they're not participating. You talked about like how busy everyone is, but I still haven't really heard what can you like how can you as the leader invite more participation. So it's a question I ask all the leaders, and I'm asking anyone that's listening to this to go back and reflect. When you go into an initiative, how can you as the leader invite more participation? And then I tell them to list 3 powerful engaging questions, so that they're prepared, because a lot of times, and I've done it myself, I try to wing it. Based on the context, I'll just come up with a powerful question. Well, in the beginning you can't wing it. And so you don't have that muscle yet, because it's a muscle, it's a discipline. The more you do, the better your open-ended questions are. And try to measure, out of the questions that you ask, maybe list the top 3. Try to measure the responsiveness of each one of those open-ended questions. Did they result into people opening up more? People joke around me a lot and say, Mohammed, if you see Mohammed, one of his questions is going to be, tell me more. That's
Yep.
but if you dissect that word, it's simple and clear. It's thought-provoking, and it's centered. There's no blame in it. Like, I'm clearly being vulnerable and saying, I don't know more. I need more. Like, I need you to help me. Tell me more. Like, you're the expert. You're the one that knows. I need to hear more from you. And that there's probably no, other than why, maybe there's no shorter like powerful question than just tell me more. But so like if you're struggling to start with a powerful question, that's a powerful question. And that often leads to a conversation. It's open-ended. It has humility baked into it. But there's so many other ones too. I'm just using that as an example. But if you're not known for certain open-ended questions, then you're not practicing them. because I practiced that one. I got a good yield out of it. I practiced again. I got a good yield of it. I'm not going to change it. Like it's a
Right.
good, it's yielding, the outcome I'm hoping for, which is really making sure people open up, making sure that, that I am able to express appreciation off what comes out of it. But most importantly, I'm destigmatizing this concept of failure, and allowing people to, like, come up with as many things as they possibly can, open up, explore the scientific method through their lens and their reality, and get to a conclusion that they were empowered to come up with. All I'm doing is giving them the capacity and space to try it. I'm literally not doing anything else.
Yeah, that's great. I think one of the questions I go to a lot is, please help me understand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Please help me understand what the problem is. Please help me understand what I can do to help. Please help me understand, if you could change anything about this process, what would you change?
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically, hey, I'm here to help, but we're a team. We're partners. I'm not no longer a boss or a leader. We're partners. How do we work together to make this move this ball forward?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
love
Well, hey,
that.
you have a
No,
final thought?
I have a final thought. Yeah.
All right.
Um, we talked about the visual management board at the tier one. One of the things, if you're a lean practitioner, or you are a coach, or you're an executive advisor, or you're a change agent, regardless of what your title is, and you have those tiers set up in your organization, your primary role should be assessing the psychological safety between each level and understanding if tier one needed to go to tier two for something, why? Because the definition of psychological safety is, one, do you feel secure? So if you're fearful to make a decision and you need your boss to do it, then your boss is creating a culture of fear. And that's why you need to bring it up. So as a coach, you need to observe for that. Did this person ask permission or ask for advice or ask for whatever because of that? Or the second part of it, are you capable? Maybe that individual isn't capable of making that decision. They need the technical competency to be able to do that. So it becomes a people development opportunity. And so in that tiered huddle, you should be only observing from a psychological safety for two things. Is it based on fear and that's why it's going up the chain? Or is it because that person isn't capable and we could develop them, then it could stop coming up? And so I would just ask anyone, especially at the higher levels, when you get information in your tiered huddles coming to you, just look in the mirror and say, is it because of me? Is that why is this coming up? Or is it because of me, because I'm not coaching and developing that individual in this capability? And that should be a way to start flowing psychological safety through the tiers.
Very good. All right. And we'll continue this in our next episode as we continue talking about leadership. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you
Thanks,
next
everyone.
week.
Take care, everyone.
As we draw the curtains on another fascinating episode, we wanted to express our gratitude for joining us on this enlightening journey. If you're hungry for more captivating and thought-provoking discussions with John Dyer and Dr. Mohammed Saleh, hit that subscribe button to ensure you don't miss a beat. Until next week, keep exploring, stay inquisitive, and stay inspired. See you on the next Behind the Curtain adventure.